So let us begin our discussions for today. As I mentioned, the agenda for today's discussion is the problem sheet number 3 on stress. So I believe some of you may have already done some of the problems, hopefully most of them. So we'll go through the problems, not all of them, but uh, I hope the coverage will be sufficient for everyone uh, to have more or less covered the entire sheet. So instead of asking you which doubts you have, let me go through the problems and then corresponding to each problem, I'll ask you your doubts. Okay, and maybe we can also go through the steps, the important steps of a few of these problems on the writing app. Okay, so first of all, problem number 1 itself. So, so can you please raise your hands, those who have done it successfully? If you have done it successfully, please raise your hand. Problem number 1 from problem sheet number 3 on stress. Among the dual degree students, if you had done the problem back in the autumn of 2019, you are allowed to still raise your hand because that still counts as you have done the problem. All right. So people who are still lying in bed, I would request you to please get up from bed, maybe sit on a table or at least some professional way so that you can actually go through the problems. Okay. In this kind of a live session, it would not really help if you just stay in bed. So Pavan Kumar is saying, sir, can you repeat? I just joined now. So Pavan, I'm just saying that we have started our discussions on problem sheet number 3 on stress. And I was asking who has done problem number 1 successfully from that problem sheet. Okay, so please raise your hand if you have done it successfully. Okay, so among the people who have not been able to do it successfully, so please people please lower your hands. So students who have not managed to do it or maybe not till the end, you can please ask me your specific doubts. Okay, is the language of the question not clear or were you stumped by a certain step or something? Ranjan, please lower your hand. So please write in the meeting chat what difficulty you faced in the problem number 1. People who had not done it. If you did not attempt it, please go through the question and see if it makes sense to you. If you still have some doubt, please ask. And among the people who have done it successfully, I would request some of you to volunteer to at least just discuss with us what the important steps are. How did you proceed? If someone can volunteer, that would be really great. Okay, Devang. So Devang is saying that he's not getting the mentioned value for sigma x dash and sigma y dash y dash. Devang, did you cross check with the formula that you know from your undergraduate days about the sigma x dash and sigma y dash, because irrespective of the author, almost any book that you pick up on mechanics of solids or mechanics of materials will have these formulae. So if you can cross check with that, then you can be sure that
yes, I'm not. My answer for that sigma xy is matching with the known formula, but not for sigma x dash. Actually, we used to have just sigma n for that, na, and just plus 90 degree would give sigma y dash y dash.
right.
But these, sir, actually, first of all, I found out that E1 dash, E2 dash, E3 dash through that rotation matrix with respect to E1, E2, E3.
You're using rotation matrices.
I Yes, sir. For finding out stress on those planes where it is deviated from the original plane by theta degree, we need to first. So I first found out their means unit 10 unit
You're
vectors in
talking
that.
about question number 1, right?
Yes, sir. One only.
So can you read the last sentence of that question number 1? I'm asking this because you mentioned that you wanted to use or you used rotation matrices. That is why I'm asking you to read that last sentence of that question.
Yes, yes, sir. I means I know that because sir, in even while finding T n cap, we need that n cap vector. Na? We then suppose it
Yeah,
is in
but that
direct.
is not the rotation matrix, right?
I Sir, but in this case, if I need to find it in direction x dash, then that n cap value would be e1 dash. So for finding that e1 dash, we need rotation matrix now to relate it to e1 cap.
You can generally think of it like that, but since I have already mentioned that the z dash axis coincides with the z axis, then what is the angle between the x dash axis and the x axis?
Uh, that directly for 2D problem, we can do that cos theta and sin theta.
That is theta, right?
Yes.
That is directly theta. What is the angle that uh, this x dash axis makes with the uh, y axis? 90
90
degree
minus
minus theta.
90 minus.
Now, instead of thinking of it like an x dash, because I have asked you to use the formula for Tn and Ts explicitly, what I really want you to think is in terms of different planes. Okay, so you see that the sigma x, so I will share my writing app, okay? So it will be clearer. So can everyone see the green colored writing app that I'm sharing? Please raise your hand. All right, thank you. You can lower your hand. So problem sheet number 3. Just wait a second. My writing app is misbehaving now. Just give me a second. I hope everyone can see this. Problem sheet number 3, problem 1. So what we have here is this kind of a system X and Y. Now we are talking about another axis X dash. Now you can think of this x dash axis together with its complementary y dash axis and think in terms of general rotation matrices as Devang was mentioning. That is very much possible. But what I think is that that is rather a very algorithmic way of looking at this problem. Okay, just because you have been asked to find out some other, I mean, the stress components corresponding to some other axis, if you directly use the rotation matrices, yes, you can definitely get it. But I wanted you to utilize your concept of the normal components of the traction vector. Now you see here that we know the stress components refer to this x, y, and z coordinate system. So let me just write the z coordinates, z axis like this, which is coming out of the plane of the screen. This is my z axis. Now you understand that when I'm drawing this x dash axis, it is basically the normal, the unit outward normal to a plane, which is like this. So this is the real physical plane that we are thinking of. And this x dash axis is the unit outward normal to that plane. Now, if I were to think of a traction vector, okay, so maybe the traction vector is something like this. This is the general traction vector on the plane, which is represented by this oblique orange colored line. And you also note that this t vector, the traction vector on this plane, that need not coincide with this unit outward normal, which is the x dash axis. Okay, the tn component of it, the t superscript n component of it, that would be like this, coinciding with this. Okay, so this is the tn component. So if we have this thing, this is the tn component and that would be the ts component. Now you also understand that this Tn component in terms of stresses or stress components, that is nothing but the sigma x dash only. So this statement that I just made, the Tn is equivalent to sigma x dash. If anyone has any doubt with it, please ask me right away. This is the whole heart and soul of this problem, identifying this thing. The rest of it is just a direct application of the formula that are present in the notes. If you have understood this part, then it is fine. So anyone who doesn't get this, then why the Tn, T superscript n should be equal to sigma x dash, please raise your hand. And if you're feeling shy to raise your hand, please go back to the notes and maybe look back at the lecture videos, the pre-recorded videos. So I'll wait for about 30 seconds before proceeding. So if no one has any doubt about that Tn being equivalent to the sigma x dash, let me proceed. Okay, so all that we need to note now is that the Tn, that will be just the n hat transpose sigma n hat. And what is the n hat we are talking about? This n hat is nothing but this x dash axis itself. So n hat in this particular case is equivalent to the to this, let's say we call this the I hat dash, okay, which represents the unit vector along the x dash axis. And that in the matrix notation would be what? It would be cos theta because the angle that this axis makes with the x-axis is theta. So this angle is theta, which is why this is cos theta. The angle that this makes with the y-axis, that is cos of 90 degree minus theta, so that is sin theta. And the angle that this axis lying in the xy plane makes with the z-axis, that is 0 degrees, so this is 1. Sorry, that is 90 degrees, so this is 0. Cos of 90 degrees is 0. Okay, so the moment we have this in our hand, all that we have to do is write for the Tn that cos theta sin theta 0, and here we have our usual sigma xx, sigma xy, sigma xz, sigma xy, sigma yy, sigma yz, sigma xz, sigma yz, sigma zz, and finally we'll have cos theta sin theta 0. Okay, so if you carry out this this entire multiplication and do a little bit of use of the trigonometric identities from high school, you will end up with that thing. Okay, and similarly you can think of the sigma y dash to be the Tn component on a plane which is rotated at 90 degrees plus theta from the x-axis. Okay, or equivalently at theta degrees from the at an angle theta from the y-axis. Okay, so I'm not going to go into all those things. So if anyone is not clear with this, please let me know what I have just done.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
So I actually proceed in this manner only, exactly like this.
Then you are not using rotation matrices.
I'm not using rotation matrix. I just use that rotation matrix to get this I dash and J dash and K dash, and then I substituted in place of n cap the value of I dash. And suppose if it was x dash y dash, then I substituted I dash J dash. But
okay, then there must be some algebra mistake.
No, sir. If I put z values, it is mentioned it's a 2D problem. So sigma xz, yz, zz, all those containing zz would be 0, and then I'm not ending up with the mentioned means.
Sorry, say that again.
So this is a 2D problem. So z components, whether shear or normal, all are 0. So it's a 2 cross kind of like 2 cross 2.
Yes, so it is mentioned that consider a state of stress in which the non-zero stress components are only sigma xx, sigma yy, and sigma xy. So yes, we don't really have to worry about all these things. So you are absolutely right that this sigma xz is 0, this is 0, sigma yz is 0, this is 0, and sigma zz is 0. Right. Then
yes. So after this, we'll end up by the term sigma xx plus sigma yy plus sigma xy sine 2 theta. We won't have that cos 2 theta middle term.
This one you don't get.
No, sir, not the one.
This sigma xx minus sigma yy by 2 cos 2 theta you don't get.
No, and in the first term also divide by 2 I am not getting. I am getting sigma xx plus sigma yy plus sigma xy sine 2 theta.
Okay. Okay. So do you want me to proceed with the algebra and do it?
So okay, then I'll post on MS Teams where
I think that's a better idea, right?
Yes, sir. So then also in sigma yy dash I'm getting sigma xx plus sigma yy minus sigma xy sine theta. So means plus minus.
All right. Okay. So so that's the plan for this one. You'll post on MS Teams. We'll see where it is going wrong. Okay, but overall this is the idea that we need to follow.
Yes, I did like this. Yeah. Rotation matrix was asked in problem number 3, where we directly means shift the stress tensor by rotation matrix. That's asked in third problem, I think.
Okay. So going on to the next one, the question number 2, it is exactly the same thing, except that I am also saying that sigma zz is non-zero this time. Okay, and it might seem like a trivial increment on what we did in question number 1, but there is a certain importance, physical significance of this question number 2, uh, where even though sigma xz and sigma yz are 0, but sigma zz is not 0. So that basically arises, as you will see later on, in the specific case of the plane strain problems of two-dimensional elasticity. Okay, so in a couple of chapters from now, we'll be discussing in detail plane stresses and plane strains. The dual degree students already know about that, and I believe many of you would already know about it. So if you know that, you know why this sigma zz would be non-zero in the case of plane strain. Okay, but no matter, we will discuss it. But as of now, for question number 2, you don't need any knowledge of the plane strain. I just wanted to highlight by giving you this problem specifically to show that the formula doesn't change whether it is a plane stress case, which is actually the situation in the question number 1, or the plane strain case, which is the situation in question number 2. That's the only difference there is. Okay, so let me not get into a repetitive business here. In question number 2, it's the same thing basically. Now, it is in question number 3 that I want you to actually use the full-fledged transformation rules that we studied in the mathematical preliminaries chapter. Okay, and again, you will of course end up with exactly the same thing, but this time I don't want you to follow the TN and TS conceptual way of proceeding. Rather, I want you to blindly use the formula from the first chapter. Okay, so the kinds of formula that we used for the transformation of vectors and second order tensors involving the rotation matrices, I want you to use that. Okay, so has anyone attempted question number 3 successfully? Please raise your hand. Okay, good. All right. So since there are a number of people who have managed to do it, let me not get into this one also. So again, the advice is that since some of your batchmates have done it successfully, please just use the formula. Okay, the ones involving the rotation matrices. For a vector, you know that you would only have one use of the rotation matrix, and for a second order tensor, you will have both the Q and the Q transpose. You just have to multiply it out in full. Okay, and if you're feeling lazy, you can use something like symbolic Python or something. Okay, but the idea is that you have to use the full-fledged formula. Okay, the question number 4. I have just given this with the idea to refresh whatever you studied in your first year mechanics. Okay, in light of whatever we have discussed in the stress chapter, I want you to have the same kind of conceptual understanding based on the theory of this general three-dimensional stresses. But I just want you to take your mind back to the first year mechanics to get this formula back. Okay, so again, there is no point in going through this in this live session. Okay, we have to conserve our time for this live session to do some new things. Okay, for question number 5. So this I really want all of you to do it. Okay, how many of you have done question number 5 successfully? Good, good. So before proceeding, let me just read one question there is from in the meeting chat. So Pavan Kumar is saying, sir, we are getting the same equation as mentioned in the problem sheet 3 for question 1. We need to use some trigonometric relations to get the given formula. So Pavan, can you please unmute yourself and tell us which question you are referring to here?
Yes, sir. The first one, the equations for Tn and Ts.
Yeah. So what about it?
Sir, we will be getting the same equations as mentioned in the problem sheet. We need to use some trigonometric relations for cos
Right,
theta
right.
and sin theta in the final equation to get those
Right.
equations.
Yeah. So that is a given, yes. So directly you won't get cos 2 theta. You'll have to convert that using the cos square theta minus sin square theta equal to cos 2 theta and all those things. So Balasaheb Pandit Bhosle is saying that he didn't understand question number 5. Yes, we are going to go through this. Right. So anyone else who is facing difficulties with question number 5, please let me know. Okay, Balasaheb, I will go through this problem. So it is the question is like this, that let Tx vector. Okay, so please note that these are written in bold typeface, meaning that they are all vectors. So the Tx vector, the Ty vector and the Tz vector, let they be the traction vectors uh, uh, on the x, y and z. Sorry, yeah, this sentence is a bit wrong. Okay, so please make a correction here. So in question number 5, it should be so this mistake was there, I think, in last autumn also. So let Tx vector, Ty vector and Tz vector be the stress or traction vectors on planes. Okay, traction vectors on planes. What kind of planes? The planes which are perpendicular respectively to the x, y and z axis. It is not that the Tx vector, Ty vector and Tz vector are perpendicular to the x, y and z axis. That won't make any sense. Rather, they are the traction vectors on planes which, and those planes are perpendicular to the x, y and z axis. Okay, so please make this correction. And then we have to show that the sum of the squares of the magnitudes of these stress vectors is an invariant that is expressible in terms of the stress invariants I1 and I2. Okay, so Balasaheb, was this the problem? Yeah, okay. Okay. So let me go to the new page. So this is problem sheet 3, problem 5. Okay, so you can think of it like this, that let me go to the rough column to make a quick diagram, that suppose we have this kind of a x-axis, then we'll have a plane which is perpendicular to this x-axis, and the Tx vector, that would be a traction vector on this plane. That is what is meant. Similarly, if you have another plane which is like this, where this is the y-axis, on this plane you will have a traction vector which would perhaps be like this. Okay, so that would be the Ty vector, and similarly for a plane which is perpendicular to the z-axis. Okay, so with this understanding, let us try to obtain what has been asked. So what has actually been asked is to express this particular thing, the Tx vector magnitude square plus Ty vector magnitude square plus z vector magnitude square. That has to be expressed in terms of the stress invariance. That is our question, which basically means that we need to find expressions for this Tx vector, Ty vector and Tz vector individually, and then we can do these operations. So first of all, let us consider the Tx vector. So in general, any traction vector that can be understood as the sigma dot n. In reality, this is the sigma transpose, but we know that sigma is equal to sigma transpose. Okay, so we might not as well write this. Okay, so you understand that part. All right, so the equivalent matrix representation would be like this. So I'm skipping one or two steps here in the interest of time. So this will be, so let me write in terms of the 1, 2, and 3 subscripts instead of the X, Y, and Z subscripts, because it's just cleaner to write. Okay, so writing X, Y, Z repeatedly will just clutter up this space. So sigma 1, 2 here, sigma 1, 3 here, sigma 1, 2 again, sigma 2, 2, sigma 2, 3, sigma 1, 3 again, sigma 2, 3, sigma 3, 3. And please note that this n hat is nothing but 1, 0, 0. Why? Because the n hat is basically the I hat, which is 1, 0, 0 in matrix representation. Okay. So if we have that, then this is simply sigma 1, 1, sigma 1, 2, and sigma 1, 3. The matrix multiplication of that is that. Okay. So what we are basically getting, that Tx vector is this. So what you're basically getting is that Tx1 component, that will be sigma 1, 1. The Tx2 component, that will be sigma 1, 2. And the Tx3 component, that will be sigma 1, 3. And please note that you could have written down this this statement, the Tx1 equal to sigma 1, 1, Tx2, all these things, you could have written down simply even without all this bother. Okay, just from a conceptual understanding of what the traction vector on a plane which is perpendicular to the x-axis is. Because the normal component of that would be simply sigma xx, which directly maps to the sigma 1, 1. The shear component sigma xy would be nothing but sigma 1, 2. And the other shear component sigma xz is nothing but the sigma 1, 3. Okay, so you could have written this directly without any of this business. But anyway, we have done this systematically. It gives us a certain satisfaction. So in a similar fashion, what we'll also have is that Ty1, that will be again sigma 1, 2. In reality, that will be actually sigma 2, 1, but you understand that they are the same things. Ty2 will be sigma 2, 2. And Ty3, that will be sigma 2, 3. And finally, the Tz1, that will be sigma 3, 1 actually, but I'm writing this as sigma 1, 3. Tz2 will be sigma 3, 2, but I'm writing it as sigma 2, 3. And Tz3 will be nothing but sigma 3, 3. So all that we have to do now is find out this this entire thing. Okay. So,
Sir,
does anyone have any doubt?
sir, I have a doubt, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, there here.
Nanda Venkata Kishore, right?
Yeah, yes, sir, right.
Yes, yes.
Sir, in the step of Tx bar, traction vector Tx.
Yeah.
There unit normal vector you were taken as I cap is equal to 1, 0, 0.
Yes.
I didn't understand that step, sir, because the Tx is not along the x-axis, no, sir.
Which is not along the x-axis?
Tx, traction vector Tx.
Yeah, we are not writing the unit vector along the traction vector. We are writing the unit vector as it is. So the unit vector is along the x-axis, because we are considering the plane. Okay, so we are considering the plane which is perpendicular to the x-axis, which basically means that if you take the unit outward normal of this plane, that would be parallel to the x-axis.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so all that you have to do now is take the squares of all of these things. So let me go to the new page and do it. So Tx vector magnitude square plus Ty vector magnitude square plus Tz vector magnitude square. So this will be what? sigma 1 square plus sigma 1 2 square plus sigma 1 3 square. Right? So this entire thing is the Tx vector square. Why? Because that Tx vector magnitude square is nothing but Tx1 square plus Tx2 square plus Tx3 square, and those are these things themselves. Similarly here, this is sigma 1 2 square plus sigma 2 2 square plus sigma 2 3 square plus sigma 1 3 square plus sigma 2 3 square plus sigma 3 3 square. So in the next step, we are going to take these things together, the sigma 1 square plus sigma 2 2 square plus sigma 3 3 square, that I'm going to take together, and the rest of it is together. You please note that there are two of them. The sigma 1 2 square, there are two of them. So let me put this 2 here. This sigma 1 3 square also, there are two of them. So maybe I can take a bracket like this. Similarly for the 2 3, there are two of them. Okay. What else? That's it. Okay. So what I will do now is re-represent this thing with a little bit of algebra. So sigma 1 1 plus sigma 2 2 plus sigma 3 3 whole square of that, and I will adjust it by subtracting the appropriate terms, which is sigma 1 1 sigma 2 2 plus sigma 2 2 sigma 3 3 plus sigma 3 3 sigma 1 1. I believe this should not be any problem to anyone. This is just high school algebra. Fine. Now note that this particular thing sigma 1 1 plus sigma 2 2 plus sigma 3 3, that is nothing but the first stress invariant. Square of that. And this you note, this is sigma 1 1 sigma 2 2 sigma 2 2 sigma 3 3 plus sigma 3 3 sigma 1 1 minus of sigma 1 2 square sigma 1 3 square and minus sigma 2 3 square. Okay, and this entire thing is nothing but the second stress invariant. So this is I1 square minus twice I2. Okay, that's it. That is what we have been asked to find out. That's the answer. Okay, I hope this is clear to everyone. Okay. So if it is not clear to anyone, please ask right away. Please ask if you have any doubt with this question, the way that I have solved it. Okay, so let us move on to the next problem. Problem number 6. So it has been given here some formulae from beam theory as we studied it in our undergraduate days, and that has been referred to as the strength of materials approach, which many of you like very much. From the strength of materials approach for a beam of circular cross section, we have the following: that sigma xx equal to minus my by I, the famous flexural or bending stress formula. Then we also have this shear stress formula sigma xy, and the rest of the stress components are 0. Okay. Now the actual question is in the last line. So it is saying that assuming 0 body forces, show that the stress field, the stress field that is given to us based on the strength of materials approach, it does not satisfy the mechanical equilibrium equations. So this is one of the easiest problems of this entire problem sheet, but it is, in terms of significance, it's very, very high. Okay. So what you have been basically asked to check out is, given these stress components, do they satisfy the stress equilibrium equations? Okay, that's it. We just have to check whether. So let me just go to the new page. Problem sheet 3, problem 6. So we just have to check out whether these stress equilibrium equations, they are satisfied or not. Please also note that we have been explicitly asked not to consider any body forces. This is the first of the stress equilibrium equations, valid along the x direction. Next we have this thing, del sigma xy del x plus del sigma yy del y plus del sigma yz del z equal to 0, del sigma xz del x plus del sigma yy del y plus del sigma zz del z is equal to 0. So you please check, if you substitute the expressions of the given expressions of sigma xx, sigma yy, sigma xy, all those things, do these satisfy this mechanical equilibrium equation? So please go ahead and check yourself right now. I will not just spoon feed this to you. Just substitute these things and check and tell me whether they are satisfied or not. Balasaheb, please wait. I'll go back to your question, but let us first finish discussing question number 6. All of you, please substitute the given expressions. Those who have not done it, you please substitute the given expressions of sigma xx, sigma, all these things, and check whether it satisfies the stress equilibrium equations that I've written on the writing app here.
No, sir.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. So I'm sure that all of you can easily show that it doesn't really satisfy the stress equilibrium equations. So obviously the natural question now is, what does that mean? That it doesn't satisfy the stress equilibrium equations, what does that mean? That is the real question here. Showing that they do not satisfy the stress equilibrium equations, I mean, anybody who has any knowledge of partial derivatives will be able to do it, even if you don't know any solid mechanics. But what does this show? What does this tell us? So someone is raising. Okay. Does anyone want to volunteer to give this answer? Like, what does it mean that it doesn't satisfy the stress equilibrium equations?
Sir, maybe it is accelerating.
What?
Sir, the body is accelerating, sir.
No, it's a simple beam. It's just standing there. You read the question, it has been said that for a beam of circular cross section, I mean, even from the given formula, you can understand it's a case of simple static loading. It is under some kind of bending moment and shear force. So there is no question of it accelerating. I think all of you at the back of your mind, you know the answer, but somehow you are afraid to actually say those words. See, we have so these kinds of bending moment formula which you studied in your undergraduate days. Okay, you have used this. You have written so many tests, exams, you have gotten your degrees. Maybe some of you have not yet gotten your final degrees, but you have passed those tests and exams very well. And now you are studying this thing, the stress equilibrium equations. So, and there is a contradiction between the two. So it must be that one of them is wrong. So V Ganesh, do you want to say something?
Yes, sir, I wrote that.
Bending moment may be function of x. If not, then dm dx, that is shear force, is 0. No. Now, see, when you have this kind of a general situation, you have to accept the fact that one of them is wrong. Okay, it is not just any special case scenario.
Sir, in beam problem, the couple of forces is present, so we cannot apply stress equilibrium equation.
Which one?
Sir, in the beam problem, the
Right.
couple of body forces exist. Therefore, the beam undergoes deflection. And stress equilibrium equations are only valid for those problems where the body couples, the force couples are not present.
No. So we said that the only assumption based on the balance of angular momentum was that there should not be any internal body couples. And those kinds of things appear as very exotic phenomena in magnetic materials. Just because you have some kind of complicated loading, and here it is not that complicated also, it's just a case of simple superposition of bending moment and shear force. Okay, so this is not at all that complicated a situation, and for these kinds of routine situations, very much stress equilibrium holds, very much so. Okay, let me just say what you are all afraid to say. Okay, the only conclusion from this is that either what you studied in your undergraduate days is wrong, or the stress equilibrium equations is not holding. Now, if the stress equilibrium equations, so this is the logical conclusion that either the stress equilibrium equations have gone wrong, or the undergraduate formulas are wrong. One of this has to be true. Okay, no matter how much you love one of them or the other, but the fact remains that one of them is wrong. Let us try to figure out which one is wrong. You see, suppose we say that the stress equilibrium equations are wrong. Then what it basically means is that since the stress equilibrium equations are following from the balance of linear momentum, and the balance of linear momentum is one of the fundamental conservation principles which must hold for any body. Okay, whether it is a solid body, fluid body, whatever, a volume of fluid or whatever, it must hold. And since if you say that the stress equilibrium equations are not holding, then you're basically saying that one of the physical balance principles is wrong, which is kind of ridiculous. Okay, so that is not going to happen. So the only logical conclusion from this is that what you studied in your undergraduate days is wrong. Okay, which does not mean, okay, the moment I say this, like, you should not try to think that your whole life has been a lie. Okay, you should not at all think like that, oh my God, I have wasted 4 years of my life, something like that. Not at all. Okay, you understand that, or rather you appreciate the fact that yes, very strictly speaking, the very fine-tuned balance principle, those kinds of undergraduate flexural loading formula or flexural stress formulas are not being able to satisfy. But at the same time, you think that so many bridges, so many engineering constructions have been made based on these kinds of flexural loading formulas. So is it not like a universal truth that those bridges are still standing? Day in and day out, they are being loaded so much. Okay, so so many old buildings are there where no computer was used. Maybe people just use these kinds of simple formulas to get some estimate, and then they constructed these things, and they're still standing. So that's a very much truth. So you understand that even though very strictly speaking, they may not be satisfying, those kinds of flexural stresses may not be satisfying a hardcore physics-based thing, but in terms of practical application, they are not that wrong. Okay, maybe they are not giving a perfectly zero value, but they are not that wrong. They work quite well. Okay, in real applications, they work quite well. But as master's level students, you must have the appreciation that not every time these kinds of flexural loading formula will be correct. You have that understanding also. Okay, so you understand what is correct and what is wrong, and you also have the wisdom to appreciate that even if something is strictly speaking may not be perfectly correct, but it may still work very well. Okay, so if you give this kind of knowledge to an undergraduate student, he or she will take like a very religious kind of behaviors. If something is wrong, it is wrong and I'll just throw it away. No, it is not like that. Okay, we should not have any dogmatic feeling about it. You have the wisdom to appreciate what works and what doesn't work and what is violating some physical principles despite working well. Okay, so this problem was basically meant to have this discussion. Okay, so anyone wants to comment on this thing or any other thing, please, this is the time to speak.
So then what are the correct equations for this?
Sorry?
What are the correct equations?
So the correct equations will be found. So like, do you remember, so Vivakar, right? You're asking
Yes, sir.
this?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. So Vivakar. So remember we studied 2D elasticity just around mid-semester time, autumn. So in 2D elasticity, we use the stress function approach to obtain some formula for the stresses in various kinds of beams under various loadings. Okay, so there is a certain approximation in that also, but the kind of formula that we arrive at, or the kind of expressions that we arrive at for the sigma xx, sigma xy, all these things from a proper two-dimensional elasticity solution, they are the correct expressions. You can actually see that those kinds of expressions will contain some extra terms beyond this flexural or the bending stress kind of terms. But the fact remains that those extra terms will have very small magnitude. Okay, that is where the difference lies. The presence of those extra terms ensures that the stress equilibrium equations are perfectly satisfied, but those have very, very small contribution in terms of the magnitude. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
see those things. Again, we'll study the 2D elasticity chapter this time also, and those things will be highlighted again.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let us move on to the next problem. How many of you have done question number 7, including the dual degree students? I'm asking this that because many of you were not in my section last year. Please raise your hand, question number 7, including dual degree students. And those who are in my section, please raise your hand also if you have done it. Among the MTech students, okay, so I would request one of the MTech students to please volunteer to just verbally explain. Okay, you don't have to show your work or anything. Just verbally explain what you have done for this question number 7. Uh, who is this? Someone is raising his hand. So, Vikram, do you want to volunteer? Please unmute yourself. So, if no one wants to volunteer,
Sir,
Who is this?
Subhan.
Shubal, yes. Say.
Sir, in that, like, that equilibrium equation,
Which question are you talking about?
the one you were asking with question number 7.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, yes, say.
Sir, I've just tried to put that in the that equilibrium equation. Hello.
Yes, yes, I'm hearing. Say it again.
Sir, in that equilibrium equation,
Yes.
sir, just that we solved in the last problem where we have to
Yeah.
verify whether it satisfies or not.
Yeah, yeah.
So, the first equation, that del sigma x upon del x plus
Right.
del tau y x upon del y,
Right, right.
and del.
Yes. Yes.
So, because tau xy and tau zx are given 0,
Absolutely.
so it becomes del sigma x upon del x,
Yes.
and we have fx equal to rho g.
Yes.
Fx equal to rho g. So
Yes.
in that equation, when we put del sigma x plus upon del x plus rho g equal to 0,
Yes.
then then expression for sigma x, like after integrating both sides,
Right, right.
it becomes rho g of L minus x.
And then it becomes what?
So the equation becomes del sigma x upon del x
Yes,
plus
yes.
rho
Then
g.
after integration, what happens?
Sir, it becomes sigma x equal to, like, we take del x to that side,
Yes, yes.
and we get minus integration rho g dx,
Yes.
integration from x to L to x.
What are the integration limits?
So from L to x.
From L to X.
Yes, sir.
Aha. Okay, so let me
Like
just
we have chosen
let,
any
let me just
arbitrary
stop
x.
you at that point. Okay, let me just stop you at that point. So whatever you have said up to this is perfectly all right. What you are saying from now on, it will give you the answer, but I want to proceed in a slightly more physical understanding based kind of way. Okay, so I'll just quickly write down whatever you have said, and then at the point where I have stopped you, there I will just slightly digress a little bit, and then maybe we proceed in a slightly different route. Okay, so let me just discuss this quickly. So problem sheet 3, problem number 7. Okay, thank you. So we have this kind of a situation where a beam or some kind of block is like this. It is under the force of gravity, of course, and we have our x-axis like this. This is our x-axis. Now, as has been rightly pointed out, we have to use these stress equilibrium equations. So if you just take a look back at the previous page, in what we were discussing in question number 6, you see in the question it is mentioned that the sigma xx is a pure function of x and the rest of the stress components are 0. That has been clearly mentioned to us. That's given to us. Okay, the sigma yy, the sigma zz, sigma xz, sigma xy, sigma yz, they're all 0. Okay, so you see that from the second of these equations we'll basically get 0 equal to 0, and from the third equation we again get 0 equal to 0. So you don't have to consider that. And in the third equation, all that will be left is this thing. Furthermore, you note that because the sigma xx has been given to us as a pure function of x, we don't have to write this as a partial derivative. Okay, we might as well write this as an ordinary derivative. Fine, and this is equal to 0. The rest of the terms are all 0. So if you do an integration of this, it will be sigma xx is equal to minus rho g x plus some unknown arbitrary constant of integration. Okay, so this c is an unknown arbitrary constant of integration. So we have to find out this unknown constant. So what is the condition that we must use? Okay, to find out this C, what should we use? Well, what you do is, well, first of all, you note that the length of this bar or whatever this beam, this is L. This is given to us. You note that at x equal to L, what we have basically present here is this plane. This plane, okay, let me just use a different color that will be clearer. Maybe this blue color. Okay, this plane, this blue colored plane, which is perpendicular to the x-axis and which is lying at one end of this beam. Now at that beam, so let us highlight that. Okay, this is the bottom end at x equal to L. And let me just draw a little bit of this vertical edges. So it is proceeding like that. This is x equal to L. At x equal to L, the unit outward normal to it is in the I hat direction. You note that the x is pointing downward. So this is the unit outward normal to it is the I hat direction. Furthermore, you note that if you consider that there is some kind of a traction vector in general emanating out of it, okay, pointing out of it, this traction vector, you note that both the normal component and the shear components of this traction vector, they are 0. Okay, in fact, so all the three components of this traction vector refer to whatever coordinate axis system we have, that is, those are 0. Why 0? Because at this end, nothing is pulling on it, nothing is shearing against it. It is simply interacting with the air. Okay, of course, if it were suspended in some kind of fluid and the fluid was moving, then that would have been a very interesting kind of scenario. Okay, so we don't have that kind of thing. So for all practical purposes, the three different components of the traction vector here at the end, they are equal to 0. Okay, so we write this. We utilize this, that the traction vector at x equal to L, that is equal to 0. What that means in terms of actual components is this. T vector is equal to sigma dot n. Here our n hat is nothing but the I hat itself, which is nothing but 1, 0, 0. So if that is true, then you see that T1, T2, T3, I'm just writing out this thing in the matrix form. Whatever this equation is in the explicit matrix notation, that is what I'm writing. You can also write this as Tx, Ty, okay, no problem. Whatever you want. This is sigma xy, sigma xz, the usual thing. And here we have this as 1, 0, 0. Now you see our Tx is 0, our Ty is 0 and Tz is 0. So what this basically means is that 0, 0, 0, and on the right hand side what we have, if you just multiply it out, it will be sigma xx, sigma xy and sigma xz. So you see that the normal component, that is sigma xx, that is 0. And please note that all of this is true only at x equal to L. Okay, I'm not talking about the whole beam. Only at x equal to L, corresponding to this blue colored plane which I have zoomed out here. So that this is, or zoomed into here. So this is that the sigma x on that plane. This is a sigma xy on that plane. This is a sigma xz on that plane, and they are all 0. Okay, now our point of interest is only about this sigma xx, because let us not forget our chain of thought. We want to find out this C, and for that we need to find out this value of sigma xx at one boundary. So what we can quickly do is that So this is giving us that sigma x6 is equal to 0 at x equal to L. Therefore, from this equation and as well as from this newfound knowledge, what we can obtain is that at x equal to L, 0 is equal to minus rho g L, x equal to L plus C, which means that C is equal to rho g L. Therefore, in general, for all x, sigma x6 is equal to minus rho g x plus rho g L, which is nothing but rho g L minus x. Okay, so it seems like I have used a rifle to kill a mosquito. Okay, like you could have almost written down this thing in your sleep, but I didn't want to do it because I wanted to proceed and demonstrate to you that the power of the general formula, it works even in simple situations. Okay, that's the biggest test of a general theory, that it should also work in simple situations. And now you know. Okay, so I hope this is clear to everyone. So please raise your hand or ask yourself uh, if it is not clear.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, here we directly taken at x equals to L, traction is equal to 0, na sir?
Say that again.
Sir, here at x equals to L, here
Yes.
traction equals to 0 is written, na sir? Here we
Yes.
directly taken that step.
Right. So that follows from the physical understanding of the problem.
Yes, right, sir. Okay.
This is ultimately a boundary value problem, and like in any boundary values problem, you have to use the physical understanding. Okay, so so just like in fluid mechanics, you use the no slip boundary condition, that follows from the physical understanding.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so let us move on to the next problem, question number 8. I want all of you to do this. Okay, so people who have already done this on your own, very good. People who have not touched this problem, I want you to do it right away. Okay, it should not take more than 2-3 minutes. So please do this right away. Question number 8. And what I have just demonstrated in terms of writing down systematically the traction vector at x equal to L for problem number 7, the same kind of idea you have to use in question number 8 also. So the first statement is like an obvious statement. The state of stress is given. So you know all the sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3, all those various 6 independent components of the stress that's known to us. Then a plane is defined by the direction cosines of the normal 1 by 2, 1 by 2, 1 by root 2. Okay, so through the specification of this unit outward normal to the plane itself is given to us, and we have been told that or we have been asked to find out the general conditions for which the traction on the plane will have the same direction as the x2 axis and a magnitude of 1. Okay, so from this information, you please try to do the problem, and whoever does it first, please, you get to explain. So question number 8, has anyone managed to finish it right now? People who have done it earlier, you need not raise your hand. So right now, okay, good. So does anyone want to volunteer? Pawan, do you want to say?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Sir, so we can write the traction along any unit vector n as matrix T equal to sigma transpose dot n.
Yes.
So writing that there n is 1 by 1. So the n vector is 1 by 2, 1 by 2, 1 by root 2.
Very good.
And the sigma matrix is given. So
Yes.
performing the multiplication, we'll get the traction vector.
Yes.
So
So
as
what is?
given, the x1 component and the x3 component should be 0.
Yes.
Equating the first component of the vector in that matrix multiplication to 0, and
Yeah,
the third
we'll get
component will
those.
get
Yeah.
the first
What
term in
about
the
the second
equation.
component?
Yeah, mod of t2 should be equal to 1. So
And the entire vector is lying along the two directions. So therefore, the entire T2 component must also be 1.
yes, sir. So
Yes.
mod of sigma 1 2 by 2 plus that thing square should be equal to 2. So we'll take the
Right.
square root out and
Right.
then
Right. Okay. So I think this should be, I mean, clear to everyone. Okay. So I'll not go into the writing app to again go into the details of it. Let's discuss some more problems. Okay. So in case anyone has any difficulty with question number 8, please post in the appropriate discussion channel on MS Teams. All right. So going next to question numbers 9 and 10. As you must have already guessed, this is basically just theory, which I have pretended to give to you like a problem. And many of you must have already done it. Okay, at least the dual degree students who were in my section, they definitely did it as part of theory. And I'm sure that many of you have coming from different undergraduate colleges, you have also done this thing, the Mohr circle for three-dimensional stresses, that theory part you have done. So this is basically just me asking you to redo that theory to refresh your mind. Okay, so
Sir?
how many of you have actually gone through the process yourself?
Sir?
Who is this?
Sir, are you only, sir?
Yes, yes, Aribuli.
In the question 8,
Question
8,
the previous question.
yes, sir.
Yes.
In that, we can write traction vector as a normal two components, a normal vector and a vector along the plane.
Yeah, but that is a different thing, right? So that way you will obtain the T superscript capital N and the T superscript capital S.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, those are different things. So here we are talking about the various components of the traction vector which are parallel to the given coordinate axis directions. These are separate things. If you're taking the T superscript N, you are taking the normal component of a traction vector on a plane, which means that you are basically taking the component along the unit outward normal to that plane. Here we are not talking about that. Here we are talking about the components of the traction vector which are parallel respectively to the x1 axis, to the x2 axis and the x3 axis. See, if you do this, you will get what? One T1 you will get, T2 you will get, T3 will get. It must hold true that T1 square plus T2 square plus T3 square will be equal to the magnitude square of the entire traction vector, which in turn is going to be equal to T superscript N square plus T superscript S square. That is going to hold true, but we are not talking about the T superscript and T superscript S here. We are talking about the three separate components parallel to the x1, x2, x3 axis.
We want TS to be magnitude of TS equal to 1 also.
No, that's what I'm saying. So here it is saying that state the general conditions for which the traction on the plane has the same direction. The traction on the plane has the same direction as the x2 axis. So perhaps you got a little bit confused by this phrase, traction on the plane. It does not mean traction, the component of the traction vector along the plane. That would surely be TS. Here it simply means that the traction on the plane means the traction vector on the plane on which the unit outward normal is the n hat. Simply the traction vector, which may be pointing along any direction. So let me just open the writing app and just draw this thing. Okay. So, you can have this kind of x1, x2, x3, and you can have a general plane like this on which the unit outward normal is n hat and on which the traction vector may be pointing along some arbitrary direction. So this is the basic theory. Okay, this traction component, it will have a component parallel to the x-axis, x1 axis. It will have a component parallel to the x2 axis, which is what is actually given here, that the entire traction vector will actually be not along some arbitrary direction, rather it will be pointing in a direction which is along the x2 axis. So for the particular problem of it, this is not the direction, so this is not the direction will be like this. Okay, this will be the entire traction vector. And because this is the entire traction vector, we can say that this is nothing but T2 E2 hat.
Oh, I thought along the surface it is along the in x2 direction.
No. So that would be this kind of a separate thing. So that would be this kind of a component which is flush with the plane. This is TS. We are not talking. We don't even know. So this TS in turn, okay, this TS in turn can have components along x1, x2, x3. That's a different sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, coming back to question number 9. I think I missed one question from Bala Sahib earlier. Okay, so let me just go back before proceeding. So Bala Sahib was asking in question number 5, result is in form of stress invariant. Does it show any physical significance? Well, whenever you have any particular quantity coming out in the form of these invariants, then the only conclusion you can draw from here is that this particular quantity would be independent of the choice of your coordinate system. So basically that means that when you have this kind of when you are considering these kinds of different traction vectors on planes which are perpendicular to the x-axis, y-axis and z-axis, then if you take the magnitudes of them and then take the squares of them, add them up together, doesn't matter which coordinate axis you are referring to. Okay, their result is always going to be a constant thing. Because it's an interesting result, and that's the physical significance. I don't know anything more to say about it. Okay, I hope that satisfies your question. All right, and it's kind of interesting because we are taking traction vectors which are very specifically on planes perpendicular to the x-axis, y-axis and z-axis, and then it is turning out that no matter which kind of x-axis, y-axis and z-axis you're taking, this is always true. All right, now coming back to question number 9. Okay, so I think some of you have already raised your hand when I asked that if you've done it, if you've attempted this. See, the most important part of this question, when you have completed the algebra and everything, is to note these boundaries. Okay, so at the very end, the last paragraph, so considering the above inequalities to depict regions in a T and TS, plot out the boundaries of those regions and the intersections of the valid regions. Okay, so you see, if you consider the first of these equations, which involve the sigma superscript 2 and the sigma superscript 3, there is a greater than inequality. When you consider the second inequality, so I'm referring to the last three inequalities which are present in question number 9. I hope all of you have the problem sheet 3 in front of you. Okay, so question number 9, the last three inequalities, I'm referring to those. Okay, so right now I'm referring to the second inequality, Tn minus sigma 3 plus sigma 1 by 2 whole square, that one. So the first inequality was a greater than equal to inequality. The second one is a less than equal to, and the third one is a greater than. So if we just quickly go to the writing app, and so you see, if we consider this kind of a plane, this is the Tn axis and this is the Ts axis. And you also note that we may mark out, as we have been already, so we have been told that sigma 1 is greater than sigma 2 is greater than sigma 3. This particular thing has already been mentioned in the question, that sigma 1 is greater than sigma 2 is greater than sigma 3. So let's say that this is our sigma 1, the first of the principal stress. Let's say this is our sigma 2. Someone has unmuted their mic. Can you please mute yourself? Thank you. And this is sigma 3. Okay, so as mentioned in the question, we have arranged them as this, sigma 1, sigma 2 and sigma 3. And you also note, it may be a little bit misleading to draw it like this, because it was appearing that sigma 1 and sigma 2 and sigma 3, they are kind of equidistant. It's not like that. So it could be like this, very much. Now please note that I have marked out these points on the Tn axis, because very importantly, this sigma 1, sigma 2 and sigma 3, they are the principal stresses, and you know that these principal stresses, they necessarily have to be the Tn components. They are the Tn components of those traction vectors which are entirely lying along the unit outward normal. So this is directly following from the theory. Now, as regards the boundaries, you can see that if you look at the left and right hand side of those inequalities, they are basically representing the boundaries of circles. So you can construct a circle. So please accept that this is a circle. Okay, so very bad circle, but please accept it. So this is a circle. We're taking the sigma 1 minus sigma 3 as the diameter. You can have another circle considering the sigma 1 and sigma 2 as the diameter, sigma 1 minus sigma 2 as the diameter, and another circle considering sigma 2 minus sigma 3 as the diameter. Okay, and if you just take a quick look at the nature of these inequalities, you will see that the valid regions, okay, valid regions means admissible states of stress on this plane. If you consider the first inequality, it will be lying outside this circle. Okay, so this greater than inequality means it is lying outside this circle. This is the boundary of the circle if this has been an inequality, but this is given by a greater than equal to sign, so it is lying on the circle and as well as outside it. So considering the sigma 2, sigma 3 points, what we have is any point which is outside this thing. Okay, all these regions which is outside, that is the valid region. Okay, I must not draw this hatch inside. Again, if you consider the second of these inequalities involving the sigma 1 and the sigma 3, you note the valid regions are lying within the circle. So what we have to do is, when you are considering the circle, taking this sigma 1 minus sigma 3 as the diameter, this is our valid region. everything which is lying inside. Just considering the sigma 1 minus sigma 3, the points which are, I mean, I could have drawn the hatch here also, like this, the entire region here. But I don't want to go inside this circle. And I don't want to go inside this circle because if you look at the third inequality, it tells me that I must stay on or outside the circle which is drawn by taking the sigma 1 minus sigma 2 as the diameter. So I must stay outside this circle also. So overall, the intersection zone is like this. This is the entire intersection zone. So these are the zones on which we'll have the admissible states of stress. Okay, inside this circle is not allowed, inside this circle is not allowed, and outside that circle is also not allowed. Okay, so all these regions which are hatched, they are the admissible zones. So that is what is basically asked in this question number 9. And you know this, this is basically a recap of your undergraduate studies. And these are referred to as the Morse circle for a 3D state of stress. It seems I have run out of time. So what we'll do is, for this question number 10 and 11, we'll use the discussion channels to clear it out, or maybe in one of the later live sessions also you can ask the time, provided you can ask the questions if you have the time. Okay, so I have to stop I have to hang up this live session right now. So let us stop this recording. Okay, so Shayan, please stop this recording.